And welcome back to A.R. Tales, aka the A.R.T. podcast. I am A.R. Mirabal, and today I am joined by Jonathan C. Harris, folks, award-winning, three-time published author, growing Gents. He's going to talk to us about everything. I mean, look at the accolades he has right behind him in his little graphic that he has there for the people listening on. Internationalist, final for growing Gents. The graphics look amazing. Everything looks amazing. And he always tries to have some type of element about self-help in there, whether he's writing to teens, whether he's writing to children. I'm all about this, folks. If you know anything about this podcast, it's right up my alley. Without any further ado, John, how are you doing today?
Oh, man, it's been a really good day. So funny enough, later on tonight, I have to do 7 miles to hit 200 for the month. So I'm trying to, in my head, plan it out. I'm like, all right, maybe we'll do like a 3-mile walk the first time and then a 4-mile walk the second time. But I'm 7 miles away from 200. I try to do 100 miles every month. I kind of lost track after I hit the 100 and I was just walking. Then I was like, oh, I'm at 180. I could really just keep going to hit 200. But now here we are with it. Thank you. With it being the last day of the month, I'm like, okay, now we're down to the final 7. So how are we going to make this work? But it's been a good day. It's been a great week.
Man, that is awesome. And honestly, I'm almost kicking myself a little bit here because I never bring in fitness and type of wellness into the podcast. I usually just keep it like with everything else. But I mean, just with my own belief, I feel a good fitness regimen is what is essential and crucial to having a good like emotional stability. Like I feel it. My girlfriend knows it. If I haven't gone to the weekend and like a week and change, I'm a little more irritable. Just like not as zen as I should be. Like everything just kind of like goes along with it. And I love that you brought that up, honestly. And just the goal itself is phenomenal. My God.
Thank you. I for those who have a chance to check out my Instagram, which is author John. I think probably the 4th picture is my before and after. So I used to be like close to 350 pounds, lost over 100 pounds. And the walking, honestly, outside of oatmeal was probably one of the most instrumental parts of doing that. So now that I'm just on the other side of have lost the weight, I'm just kind of in a maintenance phase. And the walking is how, I do that. But everything you're saying is so spot on. Like, oh my goodness, I could not imagine trying to, accomplish some of the goals I accomplished or just living the life that I live if I didn't have that outlet of exercise. It's so good for stress relieving, so good for just different things. Like when I walk, and it's funny because I do 5 miles every day and people look at me like, 5 miles, where do you find the time? And I'm like, believe it or not, I get so much done. I listen to podcasts. I might be on the phone with a friend or catch up with family or just listen to music, but it doesn't feel like how long you think 5 miles would actually take you.
Yeah. So it's actually like funny. Like, again, I've never brought this up, but I actually myself in college, I was about like 265 when I was like a freshman. And it was just kind of like a mentality change over just I mean, honestly, it was cold turkey. It was just one of those things I just felt really bad about myself, and all the things that come along with it. Because I had always been around that weight, like up until that age. And at some point, I'm just like, yeah, what is the limitation? I mean, like literally, a gym is a part of my college tuition. So like, there's a gym just a part of my college. I go there, I can do whatever. And I just started doing that and hitting it. And I again lost like 100 something pounds within like a year, and then like just like the maintenance. And it was actually like during that time. It's actually like funny that you bring it up and how it like all relates to like writing is that in that time when people ask me like, how are you like managing everything? It's like, yeah, I did all my work like throughout those like gym phases. All the things I did for the book, like all those, like when you sit back and you think like, oh man, how's the character going to go from here to that point? Oh, well, I have a problem here. How am I going to solve that? All those things I did as I was like doing my squats, doing my whatever it was.
Love that. And congratulations to you too.
Well, it's just awesome that we're both on this thing. So,
yeah.
Fitness aside, which is, I mean, honestly phenomenal. Like, congratulations for everything you're doing. And if you haven't been made aware of this man's Instagram prior to this, make sure to do so. You already know the deal. It's going to be on the banners below. It's going to be in the description. Author John, hit him up on Instagram. Follow him. Send some love, support. Buy the books. Do what you ever can. Out on Amazon now, folks. Do it. Stop wasting time. So, to kind of pivot into writing, how did it start for you? Where did the love of literature begin?
Oh goodness, that is such a really good question. I will say it kind of entered my life at 2 points. The first point is honestly just since I was a kid, I've always loved expressing myself through writing. I remember in English class or different things like that, persuasive writing was always my favorite thing to write. When I had the opportunity to present an argument and convince someone of something, that is where I shine best. And I knew that from like a young age. Like if they said, persuade me on why you should buy this, whatever, A+ every time without fail. And that's why I've always loved self-help, because self-help is about convincing people of lifestyle choices, or at least a certain philosophy that you want them to adopt from your book. So fast forwarding to 2015, I ended up actually getting a flat tire, put the car in the shop, and because I filled out the maintenance form incorrectly, I paid $200 more than I should have. As a result, I'm having this conversation with my dad about it, and he's like, well, why didn't you like call or, ask anybody if you had questions? And at the time, I'm like 24 years old, so I'm thinking, I got this. And the truth is I didn't have it. I think a lot of us go through that in life where we are so gung-ho on establishing independence that we fumble through life almost unnecessarily with certain parts of it, just to prove that we can do it. Mm-hmm. And it was a very humbling moment because it's like, I have a dad at the time, grandfather's alive. I have an older brother. I have a bunch of uncles. I have female people that I know who know cars, like so many resources, and I didn't use any of them. And, just taking a step back and saying like, wow, had you called somebody who knew more of the subject matter than you did, you wouldn't have paid for that unnecessary repair. Like I literally had a repair done on the car that had nothing to do with fixing the tire. I put a tune-up, which dealt with fixing the wiring. So, yes. So fast forwarding, it was just a real slap in the face. And I was like, wow, at 24, like I'm going through this, and I'm one of the lucky ones because I have this great village. What do guys do who don't have a dad to call, who don't have an older brother, who don't have access to people who can support them? As a kid who grew up with a great support system, I acknowledge that there are people in the world who don't have that. There are people who win awards and no one from their family is there. They go through these major milestones in life and they do them by themselves. And shout out to them, because that takes a lot of strength to do what you do by yourself, what others had a big village to do. So I say all that to say that was really the nucleus of why my first book, Master of Ceremonies, was created. It's a guide for young men. And I acknowledge that a book can never take the place of anyone's dad or anything like that. But I also do acknowledge that it would be nice to have more resources to go to if maybe you don't have that village to call. So the book covers self-esteem. It covers healthy friendships, healthy dating, physical health, mental health, spirituality, things on that like mental side that, could help you be a better person. But then it also addresses the technical side, like how to budget, how to tie a tie, how to travel to an airport by yourself, how to own an apartment and cook in the apartment. So it has those kind of how-tos. If you're like, I want to make mac and cheese tonight and I don't know how, there are actual recipes in there. So it's a full-on guide for young men. And that was really the start to my author career. So Growing Gents and Girls with Pearls are actually second and third books. They're not my first, but that was how I kind of got started in the author world, if you will.
God, I love that so much. The first thing that you said struck me so much because it's unreal, the duality of like human emotions.
Yeah.
The thing that you said is 100% true. It's like you had all these resources, but like because of like that gung-ho-ness that you had of like life and like trying to prove yourself, you didn't use them. But at that same point, if you didn't have that in you, then you wouldn't have been a writer, because it's that thing that like makes you go, it's like, oh well, you know what? Maybe let me try myself, or like let me put a hand in there. Know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
so I love that like duality, because going on either side of anything isn't like good. Like it's trying to find like a balance between like everything, right? So like walking that fine line and like actually finding it within your first book and tailoring it to like as a guide for like men, just because, and the strength of doing that yourself. So it's not even that like you did like a Batman thing that's like, oh well, this happened to me, now I'm gonna help other people. Like no, in comparison, you had two great parents, but still you're like, oh, it must suck not having them though, so let me do something. That's phenomenal.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will say that I leaned a lot on the inspiration of my friends. And, so I work at a college and, even just thinking about my students, it's one of those things that when you have an opportunity to learn how other people live, it really does help you become more grounded and grateful because, of probably a lot of my closest friends growing up, maybe like myself and maybe another friend, mom and dad have, still married to this day and have been now over 3 decades. But that just realistically is not a lot of people's situation. And the amount of students who've come to me in tears because they haven't talked to their dad in years, or, dad was supposed to help and never showed up, or just these different things. So again, I acknowledge that my book is not the end all be all solution to all things related to men's development, because it does take a village. But I know that my book is a resource to add to that village. And I stand confidently on that. I think that it can definitely help people through some really tough times. In that book, I open up about my own personal experiences. There's a chapter on mental health, and I talk about how when I was 17, unfortunately, I was almost killed. 3 guys broke into my house while I was by myself. They had guns and everything. I was able to escape. But after that, and that was the start of my senior year, that was, oh my goodness, probably 3 days before I took senior pictures. So I had to redo all of my senior pictures a second time because emotionally I was just destroyed. I had to go to therapy. So, in the book, I talk about like my experiences with counseling and why I advocate for people taking care of their mental health and things like that. So it's not just a how-to guide in the strict sense of like step-by-step instructions. There are real stories of things that I've gone through. Even though my upbringing may not look identical to some, but I hope that at least in some areas we can connect on some things.
My God. I mean, I am just blown away. I myself did not have my father figure growing up, so just taking that step, that leap in order to help like your fellow man, that's beautiful.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
One thing that caught my mind too, that I feel like kind of compounds everything you're saying, is like your love of literature at a young age. So not necessarily writing, but reading. So what was it that got you in? Because I feel like a lot of writers had that same thing. That's like we were like not only avid readers but obsessive readers. It was like our way of escaping, our way of just going and diving into like a world of magic or Greek gods or whatever it was that you were into, or maybe even some like actual like nonfiction like Martin Luther King. I actually loved persuasive writing when I was younger too. When I learned the word rhetoric, and I found the definition of rhetoric, I'm telling you, that was a year and a half obsession. It was the most interesting thing to me that you could like sway a person using your words. That concept, it was phenomenal to me.
It's so funny that you mentioned that too. You talked about autobiographies. That actually was it's kind of tied between self-help and autobiographies, but those are actually my favorite genres of books. I loved and still do reading about other people's lives when I was a kid. So to this day, I'm an avid WWE fan. I have been since, my goodness, I was 10 years old. And I remember probably some of the first longer books that I read were the autobiographies of the wrestlers. And, just it's funny how life kind of comes full circle, because some of the things that helped me present day, I go back to when I was 10 years old, reading about their life stories. I've always enjoyed learning how successful people got to where they are. And that was some of the first traces where, just reading their autobiography, to be a professional wrestler on a stage of millions of people every single week. There's so much sacrifice that goes into that. There's so much planning and prep. So even just learning, like, how does one get to that point that you even become a wrestler? Like, what has to be your backstory for that to be now your reality that we get to see roll out every single Monday on Monday Night Raw and things like that. So always loved autobiographies. What else? Fiction. I have an appreciation for fiction, but I am much more of a nonfiction person, just being full transparency here. I appreciate fiction in the sense of like, it does definitely help you dream. Like, it's so cool. I remember as a kid, like my grandfather read a lot of just different fictional books and things like that. And it's cool to just be able to like kind of close your eyes and really just imagine a setting. Whether it's based on a real city or based on some fictitious place. I always appreciated that. So, just writing, reading have always just been incorporated into my life. I think back to fourth grade when my mom had me do a dictionary word of the day. Oh my goodness. When I was a kid, I'll be honest, I can't say I had as much appreciation for it as maybe I do now, but I appreciate just having access to a family who wanted me to just be better. Doing that dictionary word a day just lets you know all the different words that are out there, helps you become a little bit more creative with how you articulate yourself. Even still, I remember my granddad, he was a huge fan of the subject of Latin. And he used to always tell me, like, if you know Latin, Greek, and German, you will be able to understand most of, the English language, because a lot of our words originate from those three other languages. So,
yeah. I mean, just knowing Spanish, like when you go to Europe, you can like hear it. Like, you can hear it in Portuguese, you can hear it in Italian, you can hear it in French. Yep. God, I love that. I love everything. So talk to me about Growing Gents. How did that come up?
Oh my goodness, Growing Gents. I feel like Growing Gents is becoming like the Beyonce of my book catalog. And I don't, I love it, but I'm still processing how I want to feel about it. But so Growing Gents is my second book, and pretty much it's like the prequel to Master of Ceremonies. So when Master of Ceremonies came out, I'd like design my own book tour. So I'm like at all these random places in the summer, and I'm trying to get people to buy Master of Ceremonies. And I kept coming across a lot of moms with like little kids, like babies, infants, toddlers, kids under 7. And they were just like, oh, Master of Ceremonies is a great book, but like I have a little kid. So, as I share with you a Master of Ceremonies, we're talking about more like healthy dating, owning an apartment, cooking, and things like that. A 3-year-old may not have appreciation for those topics quite yet. So it's weird to say because it's not an inappropriate book, but I guess it technically is not age appropriate for a toddler. So I got a lot of like commentary like, yo, it would be great if you did something for kids. So at the time, I'm like, okay, again, I love self-help. So anything that I do, I'm always like thinking with a teacher's hat, like how could one learn from this? So I said, well, if Master of Ceremonies talks about how to be prepared after 18, what would a book look like that gets you prepared before 18? So I started thinking of different life lessons and what would be some things that you'll want a little kid to do or to know by the time they grow up. So I thought about manners off the bat, like, oh, you want kids that are polite. You want kids that are helpful. You want kids that, use their words instead of their fists when they're upset. And then from there, I just started putting concepts together. Being thinking kind of long term, I wanted to put together something that every background could connect to. Just being honest, being a Black male writer, a lot of times I feel as though when people meet you and you are a person of color that writes, people automatically assume that everything that you designed is also for fellow Black people. And Growing Gents is for anybody. So instead of making the characters children, I make them animals. Because I wouldn't want, a kid who's Asian, a kid who's Hispanic, a kid who's white to feel like, well, because a Black man wrote this book, it can't help them. I wouldn't want them to process it that way, or even their parents or whoever is buying the book. So I wanted a concept that I was like, this is universal. Animals don't have, ethnic backgrounds or races. These are universal topics because, again, we're talking about politeness. We're talking about helpfulness and things like that. So that's how really the story of Animals came about with it. From there, partner with a local artist back home because I believe in giving spotlights to local artists. So I reached out to every single art teacher in the county. Crazy enough, this is the power of returning emails. I reached out to 72 art teachers and only 2 wrote me back. So not a great return percentage there, but got 2 responses. So from there, one art teacher recommended a young lady. The other art teacher recommended another young lady named Deja. I did interviews with both of them, and based on who was the best fit, end up hiring Deja, and Growing Gents, here we are. So that is the backstory of how Growing Gents came about.
My God, like what a story. I mean, just the story of its inception is a story in itself. That could be the next
Yeah.
the next fiction. That's amazing. And I honestly I love the name Deja. And her last name makes it sound like she's like the alias for like a superhero. Deja Dameron. Private
She's
Eye.
so dope. I'm really embarrassed to say this on the podcast. We have not actually met in person. Crazy enough. And I told my mom that like last week. She was like, "What?" Now, mind you, Growing Gents came out in 2020, but we started production on this in 2017. Like I started writing it October 16th, October 23rd, 2016. Connected with her in 2017. Growing Gents came out in 2020. Had tons of like formatting issues, nothing that she nor I did, but just like when we were trying to get it uploaded to the distributor, they were saying things like the pixelation wasn't enough. I'm sorry, I'm getting kind of technical here, but basically it had to be a certain amount of oh my goodness, I cannot think of the word, but it had to be up to a certain standard in terms of pixels in order to print it. If not, they were saying it's going to come out pixelated. So a lot of like redos of certain things, issues with the cover in terms of how it was done. The cover has always been the cover, so we didn't have to make any changes there. But I guess the quality of the image is what they were saying, like it's going to come out low resolution looking. So that was very like, you want to talk about a depressive state. Every time I would go to upload it, something happens. They're like, oh, we can't accept this. We're not going to print it, so on and so forth. So Growing Gents literally sat from like 2017 to 2020.
Though, honestly, my God, it's so tough.
Oh my goodness. And there are nights I've cried to sleep because, to create something, spend money on it, bring another person to be a part of your project, pay them to be a part of your project, only to have to potentially accept the harsh reality that the world may never even see this book. It is like the worst. And just being a man of faith myself, I'm thinking that this is a sign that like I'm not supposed to do this, because I'm just like, with Master of Ceremonies, it was smooth. Like June 2015, I said I'm going to write this book. March 2016, the book is out. Like there were no clunky phases to it. So then the second time around, now I'm doing this children's book, and it's just like issue after issue after issue, and I'm like, yo, what's going on? Why is this so hard when the first time was so simple? So I'm starting to question my own faith in this process. I'm questioning just all of it. I'm like, oh my goodness, am I just supposed to shelve this thing? What I realized, and now looking back, we started this out talking about like weight loss and things like that. The book came out Growing Gents I'm referring to, and Girls with Pearls, they came out 3 months after I lost my 100 pounds. And what I realized, and anybody listening to this or, whatever, I try to keep in mind, sometimes goals are delayed because other things in our life may take priority. And looking back, I appreciate that God kind of made me sit on the books because he wanted me to get my health in order first. And I think in a very direct yet indirect way, what he was saying is that if you do the reverse order, which is the books come out first, you're going to spend time promoting those books and you're not going to focus on your health. So I'm going to make sure that you get your health in order because I want to make sure that you have the endurance to handle the next level that I'm planning to give you. And I'm so glad that he actually did it that way, because now, if opportunities come up, I'm not always tired. And, when I was close to 350 pounds, I was exhausted, sleepy by 2-3 p.m. in the day. So I wouldn't have had the endurance to really manage the career that I'm building now. So yeah, Growing Gents has come with a lot of growing pains, no pun intended. And, just as a result, now I'm seeing better things happen. Like, it's won 2 awards. It's been just, commercially, people have really been supporting it, and that's been beautiful. I just had an opportunity 2 weeks ago where I was featured on the news reading to some kids at my old elementary school. They just got like a mini grant to do like a mobile library. So they selected both of my books to go into their shelf, and the news happened to cover it. Crazy story, because of COVID, all of my book readings with kids have been virtual. So that was my very first time reading my books in front of people. And what would be the chances that it's at your old elementary school with the news covering it? Like crazy stuff. Can't make this up.
My God, that's phenomenal. So it's all worth it. All the growing pains with growing Gents led to a beautiful paradise at the end. I mean, like, my God, it's just amazing.
Thank
and
you.
Everything you've been doing. I mean, so what is the future? What can people be looking out for as far as Jonathan C. Harris?
That's a good question. So I would say book number 4 is on the way. We started out talking about the weight loss, so that actually is book number 4. It'll be titled Journey to 100, and I'll be sharing the real and raw story of like how one goes from what I used to weigh to what I weigh now, and how I manage it all. That is definitely on the horizon. I want to, down the road, I would love to be an author coach, helping people not only with the writing side, but the branding side. That is something that I feel that I do well, not sounding arrogant, or at least I'm hoping I'm not coming across that way, but just helping people with the art of storytelling. I meet a lot of authors who sometimes are almost shy about their product. And what I teach people is that how you feel about it is essentially how we'll also feel about it. So if it's infectious to you, it becomes infectious to us, because we all love it. We all love being surrounded by exciting things. So when you speak about your book, if there's no conviction to how you talk about it, then as a potential buyer, why should I even care to pick it up? That's why we support movies. That's why we support songs. It's the branding, it's the storytelling. And we're not doing it just to be theatrical or dramatic, but there's real passion. Like the story I told you about growing Gents coming out is 100% true. But more importantly, I want those listening to this to really understand where I was coming from, even if you weren't sitting next to me while it was happening. So I'm hopeful that I can teach authors down the road how to really speak life into what it is they're doing and be proud of it. That's cool that, that's been coming together. Something that I'm really looking forward to down the road. I want to travel to different countries and read my books. That would be like the ideal, like, okay, you just got some opportunity to go to like Brazil or Taiwan or just wherever to be able to connect with people all over.
And I see it. I mean, you already did the impossible, and who's to say that more impossible things won't be in your future? I am so with this, folks. Pick up these books. Jonathan C. Harris, Amazon page, hit the notification so you get notified anytime he releases something. This is an author to look out for. There's a person to look out for. I mean, everything we've talked about, all the self-help that he believes in and just like wants to spread it out. I am all about it, folks. You need to get on this. Thank you again, Jonathan, for coming on.
Thank you.
And speaking with us, speaking about your books. I am so excited. And the 4th book with the weight loss, I'm all about that, honestly. And even for your first book, I mean, the whole section about tying a tie, I'm gonna have to get that. I did not have anybody teaching me how to tie. I'm still over here talking about.
Yeah, you get the hang of it eventually. It's baby steps, but there's actual diagrams in there, like step 1 through, the final step.
No, I've tried it. I can't do it.
It's
I've Googled it. I've watched videos every time. I end up like, like in a hog tie somehow, like in my bathroom. Like, what'd I do? Well, again, thank you, Jonathan. Yes. Usually I like leaving the section for just like promotions, anything. So do you have a website for anybody that's listening in, a website, an Instagram, a Twitter? Do you have a YouTube page? Do you have a Facebook? Do you have anybody like that's within your creative process team that you want to promote? Anybody you want to give a shout out to? This is the time. Go ahead.
Perfect. So I guess I'll start with shout outs. First off, shout out to you. You are so amazing. Definitely just grateful for you providing this platform. And I definitely will be praying over just an abundance of increase in viewership and just partnerships and connections for you or whatever it is that you desire to do long term with this. So thank you again for having me. Always shout out to my family and friends who really just support me. They're some of the most amazing people that you will ever meet, and much of who I am is because of them. So very grateful. In terms of social media, I am so fortunate that my name is pretty much the same on everything. So Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, PlayStation Network, all the same. So that's really cool. It is Author John. That is AUT. HORJON. So again, Author John on all social media platforms. In terms of my website, that is www.authorjohn.com. So just again, really grateful to everyone for just their support. Growing Gents just won an award like 2 Saturdays ago because of support from people. So I'm just extremely grateful, extremely grateful.
And honestly, it's all deserved. 2 awards. I mean, my God, I can't even imagine the type of hype that would surround that, honestly, especially something that you created, like your baby won 2 awards. Oh my God, that's a dream. Yeah. That is a dream, folks. Buy the books. Buy them. Stop playing around. This is the end of the podcast. AR's Tales, aka the ART podcast. I've been AR. This has been Jonathan C. Harris. If you haven't already heard of him on your local news station, because that's how it be. That's what he be doing out here. That's what he does. Thank you again, Jonathan. We will be back next week. Peace out.